Kia ora koutou, nā mai haere mai. I'm Clem, this is Matt, all part of Birdsong Opānuku. We operate in New Valley. So, do you want to take up from here?
This is who we are. We've been operating for about 3 years, and we're three local families. Clem and I, both with young children, and Karen and Morris Colgan, who have been working with Untitled Chapter for a long time, and they're the brains of the outfit for a lot of the time, them and Clem. So we work in Opānuku, Henderson Valley. Our goal is to establish an area of the Waitaki Ranges Regional Park that we back onto as a low predator zone by doing trapping and baiting. And we have a few other ways that we work with the local community to enhance biodiversity, which we'll look at. So the focus is on predator control, so stoats, rats and possums, like a lot of people. We established a trust. It's not a charitable trust because we haven't gone through that process of the greater process of getting that status. And something we should mention that other people have been much more diligent than us is where our funding comes from. Most of our funding has come from the Quick Response Fund from the Waitaki Ranges Regional Board, so Auckland Council via them are our main support, and that's because we're a small outfit, that's been sufficient for our needs so far. We have talked about bigger grants, but that's kept us going because we don't really have a lot of costs. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. So, touching on what Matt said there, so there is grant money we have got. From that grant money, we've been able to bring traps, big boss, forage, stole literally actually, and we've been able to sell those back to the community at a discounted price. Part of that is because we tap on to the Auckland Park area, which is over the Cascades. I was involved in the early 90s before it passed on to the Friends. That was a bit of a shit fight, but eventually got it going. And so myself, and Karen and Morris, we started on this side with Matt, knowing that in the upper ranges, reaches of the Waitaki Dam, we're now starting to get corcargo, and the other birds coming right down to our valleys. We've got whiteheads, we've got black bronze, and they are there. So we decided rather than just leaving making slow to the onslaught of all the cats, predators coming off the urban area, we decided to actually do something. So in the last 2 or 3 years, we slowly set up a network within the communities, involving schools, involving any community groups we can, and extending that out through Eco Matters. We've included their weed groups, etc., shed lists, all the usual stuff that you do. Our main focus is that we're trying to keep it really, really, really simple and get people involved. So, yeah, we've looked at all the fancy bells and whistles, but for now we've just got a cool group of people just like getting out there every weekend, go for a walk. It's all untracked. It's all, well, when I say it's untracked, we've cut tracks, but if you don't know where you're going to get lost. It's pretty obvious. And for those who know the eastern side, bastion for us, which holds us against that urban onslaught, is Patikura. It sits there. So it's a great time to look over everything that's coming towards us, and we sit there and we hold that point there. We do our best to look at everything coming in. And some of us actually know the history of that area from, we go back to the 1800s, it was gone. So you know how thick it is in there. And it has a huge, huge cultural history of the Māori side as well. So to the north, we go to Opānuku, Opānuku stands to our east and near tip above us. So within that area, we get an opportunity to control what's happening from Severe coming this way or what we've got right here. So by keeping it simple and keeping everyone involved, we're able to, again, just get it every weekend when we can, just slowly chip away. Eventually, as you can see, we're down in the bottom here. Our eventual hope will be to push further and further up, but we just go with the old adage, just one step at a time. We take it really, really slowly. We can't supply without the community support. So if we make any mistakes and trip ups, we literally take 2 steps back. So we're slowly working our way through, not making it too tricky. Karen's also, she's not here today, she's also with the petrol stuff. I've worked out Beth was doing in the past. Learn from our mistakes, so you just quietly just do simple things with the community, whether it's through the schools, which we've done, with IT programs, with trapping programs, with sending home with traps and with rat traps, whether it's stoat traps, whatever it is, and slowly that's filtered out into the families. We get back all that data. So as a past trapper, it's really lazy. I can see where things going through the seasons. We know where they're going to come, when they're going to come, and what's coming. So you just simply map that. We don't get too carried away, and so we get an idea what our cycles are, what our rotations are, and from that we can start planning. And at this point, we can tell you we don't have enough people yet, but we've got enough to do what we've got, and we'll keep moving.
Yeah, what you can't see on that map there, so that's our control area, is the solid green block. Obviously surrounded by a huge area of uncontrolled land, some of it private, some of it regional parkland that has minimal control down there. So re-invasion is it's a constant battle. We kind of, I guess as we hopefully grow in size, that becomes the perimeter to area ratio becomes a less of a thing, but at the moment we'll get onto numbers soon, but we've achieved some really good reduction of rat numbers, but it's not something that has an end that we've really spoken about, because it's just going to be a constant reinvasion problem.
So one of the things like this week, one of our little meetings of the month, we've got, I think it's a high school student. Further down there's a Henderson Scenic Reserve, so they're looking to set up there for trapping, which links them to us, that links further in. We've already tracked out a local orchard. It's about 66 acres of just basically possum breeding grounds, and we've cleaned out 60 to 80 possums within 2 to 3 months just from night shooting with locals again. That's cool. It's what we're finding harder is actually for our area, say along this western edge. If you imagine this is the western edge going right into the range itself. It's actually coming out of the parkland that we're in, more so at times than actually coming in from the urban area. So I'm not sure how we would go on and see if we just go a bit harder. But so basically that's showing us that we're actually working with the neighbours and working everything between suburban development and the forest with that little barrier. We actually slowed down coming in from the outside to where we thought they were coming off the farmland, and they still are. But they're actually coming out of the hinterland instead of coming back to us, which means we're creating such a nice clean environment. Little buggers up there coming straight back and eating what we've cleaned up. So it's, yeah, and as you can see from that land, it's not a Sunday walk, which makes it fun. It's the whole point of doing it. We get to be out there and amongst it. It's just awesome.
Yeah, something we should have included in here is it's an amazing bush. Really, some really big Cody and Brenda and Kakatea, and the biodiversity is really special, especially as you go further up. Lower down is sort of transitioning from Kānuku to other stuff, but up further as you go up, it goes up to the Ferry Falls, so it's big established trees. So there's 3 track lines in there. There's the red of you can see the ends up the top, and then that goes up the Sharp Bush track, which is in black, so that's one circuit there. What we do in terms of using the Sharp Bush track, when we applied for permission to the council, our strategy that we put to them was that we have designated boots that people switch out of so they clean before they go in and out of their own boots, and then when they go on the Sharp Bush track, we have gum boots inverted on posts where you're about to enter onto the track, and then people put on these special gum boots, and then you wear them up to the top, and then you put them on the posts up the top, so that, because if there is Cody dieback, which it has not been detected, it's much more likely to be on the track that was used for many years and goes through a big grove of Cody. So we try to, that's our hygiene strategy.
Well, part of it, there's all the rest that you probably already know. It's just,
yeah,
that's the simplest way. We just create a gumboot radar, basically. It's like we're taking all these gumboots and showing the kills, and we just stamp on the top. So random, I don't know, not that you'll be in there, just but for everyone else, it just looks like we just made some homage to some dead gumboots.
And there's a shorter southern line there, and it's not in the brighter red, but there's a western trapping circuit up there, and then the north to south lines are bait lines.
One of the interesting things as you come all the way down through the stream there, you mentioned earlier, a lot of the history there is the old Bradley and Manda tram lines, which from what we've been able to find, it comes down, basically what we're going through, they somehow got these massive big cuttings and tracks and 3-foot gauge and all sorts of stuff down there, and we're just walking through and just scratch your head. What we're been able to do it. And then every now and then we'll stumble with something, kind of grave and weird pixel, but yeah, that's awesome. And we'll know what they did in there was amazing. So yeah, it's quite humbling. Like we think we're doing a pretty hard job out there trapping, but who was in there before us when they took all the forest out? I don't know what they're made of. So for us now that we're bringing it back, it's cool now that we can, for the effort they put in, we have put in as much effort, just to bring it back and keep it the way it is now.
Here's some possum data. There's a few. I guess there's a few things like the seasonal variation, and we're generally seeing lower possum numbers now. We kind of have set that as a target because we know the possums are that much easier with their not being as smart as stoats and not being as prolific breeders as rats. It's a target that we want to build within the community in terms of telling the story of possum-free Henderson Valley. And there is quite a noticeable, as you go down Henderson Valley, once you pass the Candia Road intersection, then you start to see possum roadkill. So that's a kind of sign that further up we're keeping those numbers under check. That's not our only method of. I'll go to that now. So here's some catch data. So this is an example of what we're doing. Some of it is within the regional park area. Some of it is on private land where we've distributed traps to landowners. And someone from over in Candia, Coulter Road, recently joined up and has quite a big property and has been able to do quite a bit of control through that. So we're spreading that as a habit, and we're facilitating it by giving people, selling people traps at half price as a way of getting them into the community.
One of the abilities being able to working with the local school is, funny if they weren't parents, but most of them live locally, and rather than approaching the council or a body we can never find who can give us traps, it's easier for them to track us down, and then we figure out how we're going to get it to them. And then every now and then, last month, just one was shown there, we get these little pockets where a lander suddenly goes, I've got 12 acres of scrubby stuff, but I know there's possums out here, and they're annoying the crap out of me because they're on my roof all the time, and suddenly they'll turn up with 12 dead possums in like 2 weeks. You go, oh, sweet. And then they block next to them, and it all backs onto what we're doing. Eventually it will tie up. The idea is that we can just get everyone invested in that. It's just something small. The kids love it, which surprised me actually. I didn't realise that kids really do like killing things. A lot of them are quite squeamish, but they're not that squeamish. So nothing's changed there over the years, I guess. But yeah, it's the idea of just building that community just slowly, and all of them having a piece of it. And once we get the kids involved on that grassroots level, and they have physically get to interact with their own environment, what they're doing, they can see the difference they're making. Brings the parents in, it makes it easy for them. Oh, we just go play that dead thing, and they're happy. Or whatever it is, and they track it, they record it, and through a Catch IT program that was set up with it, I can't remember what it is, but it's a serious thing. Karen's onto that, she's really
good. There's a slide on that screen.
Oh, yeah, that'll explain it. But either way, the kids are, they're attached into a national database, so they can see how they're tracking against other kids, not just in Auckland, but nationally as well. So it just gives them something for the couple of years we can hold their interest before they move on to something else. But each year there's new kids, so we keep batching on hatching as best we can.
This is because Karen and Morris were working with Ark in the Park, and they did some control, like no pest control testing in our valley as their baseline to what was happening in Ark in the Park, and so that they had put their monitoring tunnels out, and it would always get 90 to 100% visitation. And the last 3 times, it's been really low since we started. The last 3 times are at 0. So although we see eating still at various times on the bags of bait, where there's obviously been a big reduction in rat numbers in the valley, in the controlled area. That's some of the wider volunteer team. For the first 7 or 8 times we got together, we were cursed with weather like that. But we all enjoy a bit more of that now. This is a workshop where we're in the local school giving traps or selling traps to the community and talking about strategies and trap usage and why we do what we do.
We're lucky enough to be, because we've been involved in school you know, the last couple of decades for some of us. It's not only tripping, we've also done planting days, we do all the rest, but we'll bring them into the school. You know, it just seems a lot easier, just what I was explaining before. The school's brought into us, and so there's no charge for the hall or the usual community spirit. So we're really quite lucky to be able to have just still what everyone considers a rural school, and everyone just pitches in and joins in, and it makes it a lot easier for us.
I think we've talked about that. Oh yeah, so that's similar to before, but that's a where the newsletter that goes out to our mailing list of about over 100 residents now. That's the sort of thing that we have. We tell them about what our catch data is. Clem often does a history section. I often do a native tree of the month type thing, and so it's sort of promoting ecology in a wider sense. I have a bit of a hobby of growing native trees, and my wife's given me the hard word in terms of they've got to start getting rid of them at some stage. So we'll use that as a way to, we'll give those away at workshops as a bit of like engaging, bring debate to bring people in, that sort of stuff. Revegetation, because we live in a very vegetated place, it's not a huge focus, but they're all eco-sourced from within the valley, so we kind of, it's a social and engagement tool rather than.
That's one of our cool indicators. A lot of the trapping we're in, so slow long potocarp, we've got a lot of cocoa saplings there on the ground now that we're struggling before when we'd seen them disappear, but now we're actually starting to get coverage of it coming through in the areas that we're trapping. So some of those target species that normally would disappear are actually staying there, so we must be doing something.
And on that note, a couple of weeds that we see right in the middle of the bush, which are Ketedu spread monkey apples and the bangalow palms. We're starting to see them coming up, you know, in the middle of nowhere. So we do what we can as we go past, but that's on these very narrow little paths. So it's interesting to see that as changes, because both those species have the ability to grow in the middle of bush, and the dispersal method that takes them there. So that'll be.
Which is why you won't be able to buy bangalow palms in a garden centre from the 1st of September 2022.
That's awesome. Yeah, because and if we could get rid of the existing ones, it'd be just as likely to get rid of cats. So yeah.
So we've just given you a quick scattergun approach of like what we're doing. So we thought, well, we'll just 20 minutes and 10 minutes instead of having something really formal, because we threw this together really quickly. So so
Thank
any
you.
questions?